Hey everybody, it's Cindy, and today I have a quick card making video for you. I am going to make a birthday card using the Giggle Greetings stamp set from Stampin' Up, embossing folder, the chevron one from Stampin' Up, and then some products from my stash, some basil paper and some Echo Park paper. I only wanted to use the top part of the stamp because I didn't want to use the bottom part of the sentiment, so I went ahead and taped that off with washi tape. I'm going to color the image with Copic markers, and I'm showing you the colors there. I'll also have the list of Copic colors I used in the description bar below. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and build my card base, and then also build the layers of pattern paper that I'm going to use on top of it. I am going to try to keep this relatively flat. I've had some problems lately with my post office not putting enough postage on the envelopes that I mail. I don't know whether it's because they're too lumpy or whether it's because it's somebody new. I don't know. All I know is I've had two people lately tell me that they had received a letter from me that was postage due, and I really don't like that. So I'm going to try to keep this one flat and see if that helps when I mail it. It is going to have a few enamel dots, but other than that, it's going to be simply paper layers. Now, one of my paper layers is going to be a fishtail flag, and I normally would cut that out on my silhouette cameo, but because everybody was asleep when I was making this video, I went ahead and tried to cut it out just on my trimmer. Apparently that's not one of my skills because I had a really hard time with it, and I went ahead and skipped over that in the video so you didn't have to witness my frustration. I finally got one that worked okay, and it looks pretty good. It's about the right angle that I wanted. It took me a little while to trim it down, but once I got it, I really like the looks of it. And then I'm going to go ahead and emboss the card base that I'm going to use. Now, I only want one side embossed. I don't want both sides of my card base embossed. I just want the front side. So the way I did that was went ahead, used my scoring board to make the card base to divide it in half. So I scored it at 4 1/4. And then I'm going to fold that back part of my card base over the back of the embossing folder so it doesn't actually touch the impression part of the embossing folder. And then I'm going to go ahead and run it through my Big Shot, and it gives a really great impression. I really like the chevron detail on this. I think it's going to be a very useful embossing folder for a lot of different projects. And I did try the other day, I did try some faux letterpress with this same embossing folder, and it looks really, really good. So that's another way you can use your products for more than just one function. So it's meant to be embossing, but you can do a faux letterpress technique on it that's really cool. Now I run my Big Shot through forward and backwards when I do a embossing impression, textured impression, just because I really want to make sure that impression transfers perfectly. I don't want to have to make another card base and start over. So as you can see, this came out really, really well. There's a lot of depth and some really great dimension that you get by using this embossing folder. Now that I have my card base ready, I'm going to stamp my image on the fishtail flag, which will be the top layer of this card. And I went ahead and taped the bottom of the stamp off with washi tape because I didn't want the bottom part of the sentiment. I only wanted the top part. It's one of those ways you can extend the uses of your stamps. I got some ink on the washi tape so I can wipe that off, and stamped the image onto my little fishtail flag. One way to get really clear impressions when you're stamping is to leave the stamp down for a few seconds. Don't just push it down, pull it back off. Leave it down and let the ink really saturate the paper. Now that I've got my stamped image the way I want it, I am going to do a kind of a dry run of my card to make sure all the layers are going to fit the way I want them to. And the reason I do this is because a couple of times I have made a card and done all the coloring with the Copic markers, which takes me a while because I'm fairly new to it, and then found out it didn't fit, which is very frustrating. So now I know that I want to every time go through and make sure that all the little pieces are going to fit exactly the way I want them before I color the image. That way, if I have to restamp it again, it's just a one-time stamp. It's not restamp and recolor. Not that there's anything wasted when I have to recolor, because, you know, Copic coloring is fun and it's different every time and you get a different look every time, no matter if you're using the same colors or not. But it's still frustrating when you're trying to get a project done. In this case, I discovered that I wanted more of my embossed image to show and had to trim down that blue paper a little bit. So now I'm going to color the image. I used 2 colors of aqua for the bowl and then decided I wanted one more layer in there, so I added a 3rd color, and I will have the list of colors that I used down below the video in the description. And I just start with light on the base level, move on to 2 darker colors, and blend it out. I do it really simple. Like I said, I'm fairly new to Copic. Yeah, I'm going to color in the image, make sure I get all the edges blended out. I made sure I made that stripe just a little bit darker to give it some visual interest. I should have done it in a different color in hindsight, but I like the way it looks anyway. And then I'm going to start on the blueberries the exact same way. Color it in with lighter color, and then move on to the darker color to add shadows and depth. So I have seen some people do some amazing things with Copic colors, and find that there are times when it really bothers me that I can't get those same similar results. But then I think about it and think I am making handmade cards that people are going to really like because you've taken the time, and it's kind of a gift in itself to take that time and give it to somebody. But also, it's a creative outlet for me. I may not be great at it. I may, there may be a lot I can learn, and I'm sure there is. I would love to take a class sometime, but I'm still expressing my own creativity and doing something that not everybody would do just to make a birthday card. So I think that, to me, is why I like doing it so much, even though I'm not great at it. So I don't let it stop me from creating something that I think is unique and different. I've been making cards for about 3 years now, and I have to admit some of my early ones were pretty cheesy, and I've come a long way since then, but even the cheesy ones were appreciated. And now I have people ask me for tips on how to do it. How long did that take you? Or something like that. So they are appreciated, whether you know it or not. They really are. People recognize the time that went into them. So I think it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor. So back to the card. Now that I have gotten most of the coloring done, I'm going to go ahead and add just a few darker shadows here and there with the same color of blue I've been using. I'm just going to add another layer. It's one of the things I absolutely love about Copics is you can just continually build up the layers, and the more ink you use, the more saturated you get the image, the more depth you will get. So I'm just going to go in and add a little bit more dark here and there, and I'm not really going to blend this layer out as much. I want that dark to show that they are round cherries, well, blueberries, in the bowl instead of just flat colored images. So now I'm going to put together my card base, and I am going to use Sukwang tape or score tape, whatever you want to call it, on this because I want to make sure that the paper sticks down to the embossed card base. I'm not sure how well it's going to stick because there are so many ridges and layers, so I'm going to use some extra heavy-duty adhesive, and my go-to is always Sukwang tape. Then you could use red line tape or something similar as well, but in this case I used the Sukwang tape, and I really liked the way it stuck. It felt like it was good and sturdy, and because I had it out, even though I probably didn't need to use it, I used it on the fishtail flag as well. Probably didn't need it because the second layer is already flat, but it was already out, and I'm the big proponent of making things as easy as possible when you're putting together a project like this, so I just use what I already have out. All in all, this was a really simple card. I kept it flat on purpose for mailing purposes, but I also kept it really simple because it is a card aimed for a guy, and I wanted to keep it sort of semi-masculine. I was able to use a stamp in a completely different way than the original sentiment, so I left out the bottom half of the sentiment and changed the color of the cherries to blueberries. I was able to use the stamp to tailor the card for the person I was sending it for instead of it being a generic sentiment. So in this case, the inside joke in the family has to do with my son and some blueberries. So I changed the cherries to blueberries because I didn't have a blueberry stamp. I never knew I would need one of those. Although now I'm on the lookout for the next year's card. It's one of those things where you can use your stamps in many different ways. I'll someday send a card that says sometimes life is just a bowl of cherries and sometimes it's just the pits to someone who's having a bad day. That's one of those things that makes stamp sets well worth the investment that you put into it. So the last thing I'm going to do to this card is add some enamel dot to kind of draw your eye across the image. And that's it. If you found this video helpful or if you liked it, please give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for future videos. Thanks and have a good day.